Tracy, what's a lifestyle analysis?
A lifestyle analysis is a specialized accounting project where I go through all the bank statements, credit card statements, investment account statements, look at all the income and the spending of a couple and try to figure some things out. I might be trying to figure out, quite simply, how much were they spending over a period of time? I might be trying to figure out if there's any hidden sources of income, or I might be trying to figure out if there's any hidden money, inappropriate spending, things like that.
What is a lifestyle analysis and why is it important in the context of a divorce?
The easiest way I can describe a lifestyle analysis is to say that I am quite literally looking at how much did the lifestyle of the parties cost. So it's a very factual type of analysis where I'm looking at the ins and the outs. And then from there, I move on to the fraud type of stuff. And was there money disappearing or things like that? In the divorce context, it can be used a few different ways. One of the really common ways is when we are trying to figure out how much support should be paid, either child support or spousal support. Now, as you know, Miles, if someone is sort of an average person, makes an average kind of salary, there's typically charts or guidelines where the child support or the spousal support will be sort of set forth in a formula. But when people start earning more, start accumulating more, sometimes they fall outside those guidelines. And then a lifestyle analysis like I do might be really important because it's going to establish how much does it cost to take care of the kids? How much does it cost to keep the other parent in a home, et cetera?
So, in your experience, when you're preparing a lifestyle analysis, what are the relevant timeframes that you're looking for in relationship to prior to the filing of the divorce, after the filing of the divorce versus projected into the future?
I will typically look at a period of 3 to 5 years prior to the filing of divorce. And that time period is going to get refined based on what state we're in and what that state says about how far we can look back for certain things like dissipation of marital assets or things like that. But 3 to 5 years is usually a pretty good time frame to work with. I will say most often it leans towards the 3 years. The reason why we don't go back only 1 year is because many times that 1 year might have some unusual things, might not always be representative of how the family lived. In particular, given that some people sometimes do what I call divorce financial planning, that 1 year could be really skewed. Someone might have ramped up their spending, might have drastically reduced their spending for a variety of reasons. So if we go back 3 years or 4 or 5, we might get a better picture of what normal spending is like for the family.
All right. Assuming that a potential client is watching this video and is going through a divorce and is hiring a forensic accountant to help with the lifestyle analysis, can you walk us through what a typical forensic accounting engagement for a lifestyle analysis might involve?
Sure. What we will do to start off is have a sit down with the attorney, the client, and myself, and we'll talk about what are the issues in this case? What are you concerned about? What problems might you already know about? What evidence have you already seen? What are we working with? So that we can sort of come to an agreement as to where is my focus in this engagement. Once we know that focus, we talk about the time period we're going to go back. Of course, the longer the time period, the more expensive the project gets. And so we are trying to balance cost and benefit. And many times what we might do is say, let's look at 2 or 3 years worth of data, see what we find. And if we find enough smoke or enough fire, we might choose to go back a little bit further. So we've defined our project, we figured out our time period, then we talk about what documents do we need. And I see, what do you already have? What else might you need? I am very focused on tax returns, bank statements, credit card statements, investment account statements. Now, there's all sorts of little other documents that might become important, something like loan applications, one little known, really important document that can help a great deal in a case. So I will have a checklist for the client of other financial documents that might help us. I have a financial discovery checklist for the attorney that is a very detailed list of all sorts of documents that you could request in a case, depending on the circumstances. Once we get those documents, I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to spend lots and lots of time going through all the transactions in detail and tracing that money. If you break down what I'm doing, it is tracing money, seeing it go from one account to another, or seeing it go out of the account to be spent on the mortgage, the car payment, the groceries, whatever it may be. And when I'm done with all of that and I have my findings, I will write an expert report and then wait to see if there is further activity that I'm needed for, such as a deposition or a trial.
Right. So we're going to come back, put a pin there. We're going to come back to that point in just a second. Now, one of the reasons why I'm interviewing you is we've known each other for a number of years, and we've spoken together at ABA Family Law Section conferences, and we're both ABA Family Law Section authors. And after I published my first book, you published your first book. And you were kind enough to give me some good quotes for my book about your book and lifestyle analysis in that chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and your experience in general? And you have a copy of your book there.
I was just getting ready to give us a look at lifestyle analysis in divorce cases.
Yes, and the links to that book and the Divorce Money Guide will be in the description in this video and on my webpage, by the way. But tell us about the book and your experience performing lifestyle analysis as a forensic accountant.
The book was written for divorce attorneys to give them insight into the process of doing a lifestyle analysis, to help educate them about when it's necessary, what documents you need, what is the process, how do you find the right expert for your case, how do you take a deposition of an expert, whether they're your expert or the other side's expert, and all those kinds of issues. So I really went into detail with how I do the lifestyle analysis and what the documents are, and give some, sample charts and graphs and things that I do in my reports to show them how we can really use this lifestyle analysis to our advantage in the divorce case.
And I mentioned I wanted to pin and come back to it, which is of all the lifestyle analysis engagements that you performed, how many of them settle before you have to give a deposition?
Oh gosh, I would probably say between 50 and 70% settle before I give the deposition. And so to me, I do think that my work is pretty integral in coming to that financial settlement. And I feel like if I write a strong enough report, we have a good chance of it settling before they spend the time and money doing the deposition.
Especially when people know you and know your work product is solid before they even read the report, which is a nice advantage of being you. So, I mean, in my experience, the lifestyle analysis report and all reports from competent, experienced forensic accountants are extremely helpful in getting cases settled. And when I don't have it, I kind of feel a little, like I got a limb missing going into those negotiations. So, and then of the time you perform that work, how often are you consulted during a mediation or during a negotiated settlement?
I don't actually end up being consulted a whole lot in that regard. And I'd like to think it's because my reports are really clear and pretty definitive. And we do prepare in advance of those mediations and things like that. And the attorney and I will talk about things. If they come forth with this, what would our response be? And so I think that advanced preparation helps so that I'm not needed when the negotiations are really heating up.
Now I'm going to ask you a really vague question.
And I can give you a really vague answer.
That's fine. That's fine. But we get asked a lot what are the ranges for retainers and costs, not necessarily for you, but for what you see in your area, in your experience, for solid experienced forensic accountants to perform a lifestyle analysis and issue a report?
$10,000 is a reasonable starting point for that retainer. I would say then anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000 is probably a typical fee, with, of course, the higher fee being for the more complicated cases. Now, I will tell you that there are forensic accountants who will take a $5,000 retainer and start your case. But the truth is that's not going to get you very far. Unless you're looking for just a very high level analysis or a very limited time period, $5,000 isn't going to get you all the way through what you probably need in your case.
Right. And one of the things that I think lawyers miss, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is if I've got a forensic accountant performing a lifestyle analysis, I'm going to end up with a marital balance sheet that I can trust and use. I'm going to have a thorough review of the discovery that my team may not have to do. So when you think about those costs, it's not, in my opinion, and I want to get your thoughts on this, that's not in addition to necessarily all the dollars you're going to spend with the lawyer. Some of those dollars you spend with the forensic accountant is going to replace some of that work that would otherwise have to be done by the legal team. Would you agree with that?
Yes, those dollars should replace some of the legal fees. Now, what I unfortunately see in cases too often is the law firm spending time spinning their wheels on the finances, maybe having a paralegal taking the bank statements and entering transactions into Excel, and them trying to kind of figure out some lifestyle on their own. And I think that those projects start off with the attorney in a good place. They're trying to save some fees for the client, but it can really quickly get away from you and end up to have no benefit to the client, especially if you ultimately end up having to hire a forensic accountant anyway.
Right. Because one of the hardest topics I have to share with people is, as the lawyer and the paralegal, we in the legal team, we can't testify. We can generate paperwork that the client could testify to, but most of that's still hearsay, especially tax returns. Whereas once you get a forensic accountant on board, one of the cool things about an expert witness testimony, is that they're able to testify and rely upon hearsay, including but not limited to all those documents you talked about, the tax return, loan applications, and bank statements, which are chock full of hearsay. And one could argue double hearsay. So from that perspective, what would you say, let's say in a typical lifestyle analysis, you've done your work, you've issued a report, and you've billed about $15,000. How much of that do you think, and again, this is hypothetical, is replacing work that a lawyer and the legal team might otherwise be required to do?
On a $15,000 fee, I'd be confident saying at least $5,000 of it is going to replace some of those legal fees.
Yeah. And if done correctly and coordinated well, in my opinion, it might go up to 50 of the work, because I can rely, because I know you, Tracy, and I know your qualifications, your experience, I can rely on you to pick out what we would otherwise want to know.
My favorite clients are the attorneys who let me do what I do best and kind of keep their hands out of it. Yes, I want to know what's important to you. I will come back to you with, I've seen this, this, and this. Are any of these things that you had on your radar or that you might be extra concerned about? What would you like to do about that? That back and forth process is great, but to the extent that you mostly say, do your thing and let me know how it turns out, those are my favorite clients.
Right. And one of the hardest things to communicate is, you, as the experienced CPA, you know what to look for. You don't have to be told. It's not, if there's a $50,000 transaction that just disappears off the radar, you know to bring it up. If it's 10,000 and then a 2,000 and a 3,000, you might, it's going to smell bad, and you're going to be able to know where to look to next. You don't need me, nor do you want me telling you where to go look.
That's right.
And so, I think it's a great use of resources that I've shared with the CPA world and the attorney world for over 25 years, that this is a great use of it. But thank you so much for joining us, Tracy, in Explaining Lifestyle Analysis. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the next video.